What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. It may feel like we just had Scarlet and Violet news, but that was about 2 months ago, so the brand new information is most welcome. Some of this stuff is cool, and some of it's just weird, but instead of a wish list, we got to see some concrete details. So let's look at some of the pros and cons for the potential in the upcoming Generation 9. And just so we're clear, this is a sort of a series. I have done this multiple times before, so it's not like I'm jumping the gun. Before the game comes out is the only time we can do this. So here are the top pros and cons for the upcoming Scarlet and Violet. Con number 4, early Legendaries? So, I don't know that this is the case for certain, but this latest trailer sure gave off the vibe that we would be riding these creatures through most of the game. Now, maybe that's not the case, and they just wanted to show off the feature in the wide open lands of Paldea, but I think this might just tip over the edge of too much. I think it's great that they're giving us a way to get around so fast, especially over sea and sky as well, but compare it to Legends Arceus. Sure, those additional terrains were added on later, but we got access to Weirdeer particularly early on in the overall game. So is that about when we can expect to get the mascot Legendaries this time? I'm thinking back to Oros here, when we were just given one of the Eon twins because of the new soaring feature. And don't get me wrong, I love soaring, but we couldn't do that for another few hours of gameplay after that gift. So it's not unheard of if these dragon cycles come to us a bit earlier than would really be needed. But also looking at Legends Arceus, they gave us different mounts for varying environments in the game. And I gotta say, I kinda like that better. I do still like Koraidon and Miraidon, but it just made the world a little richer to have multiple Pokemon responsible for being your steed. I just don't want these legends to become dissipated by overexposure too early on. Pro number 4, the Rollout. Not so much the building Pokemon attack, but rather I have been incredibly impressed with the restraint that they have shown thus far in revealing information for Scarlet and Violet. Now they still have time to mess that up before we get there, but I don't think that they will. We only just learned this gen's gimmick 3 months before the game comes out, but more on that later. I always point to Alola for oversharing, but it's only because they didn't really leave any surprises for the actual playing of the game. But it's not unique to just that. Oros spoiled every single Mega that they were adding as well, so I do feel like they did a bit better for Gen 8. Like, I didn't even know Rookidee, Blipbug, or Squavit going in, which was quite refreshing. So I'm hopeful that we won't get everything laid out in Scarlet and Violet before we ever get our hands on it. Even the Galar DLC kind of revealed a little too much. I guess that's because they just wanted to convince people to buy it, as that was brand new for the Pokemon series, but I think we're in a pretty good spot with the era before Scarlet and Violet, and we will still have lots to explore once we get to experience it for ourselves. Con number 3, leveling, maybe? They've been alluding to it for a while now, but they have fully confirmed that this is an open-world Pokemon game, and that's pretty neat as something new to the Pokemon franchise. However, that does lead to some concerns. Namely, I'm worried that the leveling will be pre-programmed in so that your choices are more of an illusion. Sure, you can go over that way, the Pokemon are all level 50 and you're only an hour and a half into the game, but it'll make you tough. Some areas will inevitably be blocked off just because they're too difficult. So what's the difference in doing it that way and just blocking it off story-wise? And if you do repeatedly bash your head into overly arduous battles and come out on top, that means once you go back to uncover secrets in another lower area, you'll be severely over-leveled, and those sections won't be fun because you'll just breeze right through them. So maybe this is the most speculative, but without a deeper involvement, the game will inevitably become quite unbalanced. But it's not all bad because, pro number 3, the Paldea Region. First things first, we finally got the name of this region, and I couldn't be happier. Paldea sounds awesome, probably one of my favorite names to date. But the region itself does look great as well. The map seems huge compared to the last few generations, where you could almost see your player character on it. It doesn't really jump out as Spain when you're looking at it, and of course the Kalos region can't be too far away, so hopefully we'll be able to get some kind of connection, but I wouldn't expect more than just maybe a single crossover character. They not only showed us more actual human civilization, just like I wanted, but even more exploration out in the wilderness of this vast space. And there really is just so much out there to investigate, since that's about the other half of the map. And just imagine all of the unique areas that certain Pokemon can only be found in, rewarding an in-depth survey of this land. Not to mention all of the new people that they're showing us means that the Paldea region has me pretty intrigued to dive right in and absorb it all. However, con number 2, the Pokemon? Look, every generation of Pokemon has its critics, and there is certainly the art style changes distancing recent gens that deserves to be discussed in full, but I don't think that's the problem here. I am excited for these games, but maybe not so much the Pokemon that we've seen thus far. I do like the mascot Legendaries, and I find Fuecoco to be a great starter, but I am not really a huge fan of Quaxley. I think Sprigatito is fine in my book, though. I also think that Palmy is probably the weakest Pikachu clone that we have ever seen. I mean, it's so randomly bulky, yet bland. And it even went back to being monotyped, making it blend into the vast sea of other pure electric Pokemon out there. Now listen, if you like any of these Pokemon, then good, I wish I could be like you. Because I'm just sure there are people that love Fido, I'm just not quite sold on it. I mean, do we really need another pure fairy-type Pokemon that's a dessert? But an interesting detail seems to be that a lot of these Pokemon seem based around cooking for some reason, like how Fido has yeast breath, and Lechonk is used to sniff out ingredients, and even Smoliv is related to cooking, so is that going to be like a big feature of these games, or is that simply a decision based in the lore? I do kind of like Cetitan as a Narwhal Pokemon, so it's not all bad, but I do hope that they can show us a bit more variety, and maybe reveal some real winners like Mudsdale and Dreadnought before their time. But then again, we did get pro number 2, Wooper. I have no problem with the original Wooper. Well, that's not true, I hate the fact that its mouth was painted on, but other than that, it is a perfectly fine Pokemon, and Quagsire is super useful with an excellent typing. But now they have given us a variant form in the Paldea region, having left the waters to be safe on land, but gaining poison as a defense. It's a shame that it lost the water, actually, because it looks like a Jolly Roger, but that's probably just a symbol of its toxicity. But why does this deserve a spot on the list by itself? Well, aside from being the first poison and ground type combination since the royalty of Gen 1, which is fantastic, I think the fact that they only showed us the base stage is indicative of something more. Instead of a regional Quagsire, could we be getting a different evolution entirely? Now, this is not a guarantee, obviously. We did see Hisuian Arcanine long after the Growlithe was confirmed, but there's still the possibility of a branching stage like Cursula or Berserker. If that were just for Quagsire, that would be fine, but where there's one, there could be more. I could be reading into this far too much, but seeing as how regional variants are the one gimmick that hasn't been thrown out, you can bet that they'll keep building on their favorite feature. Con number 1, opportunity cost. This one is kind of out there, but while Scarlet and Violet look pretty solid, one of the main gripes I hear a lot are not even really directed at these games, rather they'll say, this is what Gen 8 should have been. And, you know, that's kind of true. There were a lot of half measures taken for Pokemon to get to where they are now. Pokemon in the overworld? Do it in Let's Go, but don't have enough time to put it properly in Sword and Shield, so some Pokemon models won't show up, and nobody gets to be a shiny. Open world Pokemon? Do it in isolated chunks with minimal human structures as DLC, and then expand it ever so slightly to larger regions in Arceus, but still have invisible walls at the edges. It's just a little unsettling to think how much further we could be if they took full ownership of these risks. If the Gen 7 features could have been in Gen 6 by utilizing the 3DS to its fullest extent, then surely Gen 8 would have been able to include all of the quality of life features that we're seeing in Paldea. Maybe that sounds nonsensical to include because it's not even really Gen 9's fault, but when everyone is saying that these games look great if they had come out 5 years ago, it's kind of hard to ignore. Gen 9 may finally live up to the full potential of Pokemon being on a home console, just one generation too late. But, pro number 1, Terastallizing. Yeah, that'll take a while to get used to saying, and we thought Gigantamaxing was tough. but this gimmick is pretty much exactly what I was asking for. It's not like this is my favorite thing to ever happen to Pokémon, but something non-intrusive that every Pokémon can utilize is a perfect kind of gimmick if you ask me. Firstly, this makes it far more accessible than Megas or Gigantamaxing, where only a dozen favorites got special treatment. But every Pokémon here can share in the fun. Even the earlier stages that would have no chance of getting one of those special forms. So this is kind of like Z-moves in getting even the tiniest of Pokémon in on the action. I don't think the Terastal phenomenon even has quite the same capacity to show such overt favoritism like past gimmicks, where even Z-moves had special one-of-a-kind options like for the Alola starters or Snorlax. But if they were going to do that with Terastallizing, you know that Pikachu would have gotten one, but instead they just made him a flying type. That's another thing that makes this gimmick great. Adding a third type to Pokémon is something that only a true visionary could have imagined. But in all seriousness, we don't know exactly how this will work, because I don't know if this adds on an extra type or it just replaces one. I don't think it would outright change them to a monotype, but at the same time the trailer seems to show a dragon move being used on a Gardevoir with a water crown on its head, so maybe it is just a replacement. Either way, this gimmick seems to be far more relevant than Dynamaxing, that was all but ignored in the main story of Gen 8, and you could only do it in some gyms and the occasional raid. But Terastallizing looks like it can be used by any Pokémon at any time, and even provide some wild strategies, as you change a Pokémon's type right before their eyes, so they have to come up with new attacks and do the math in their heads as to what will now work. We'll see about the details, but to me this appears to be the most balanced gimmick that they have done so far, and not completely taking over the game. But they have had a while to get it right, so I guess practice makes perfect? But those are just some of the initial pros and cons that we have before Scarlet and Violet come out. It's not perfect, no game is, but on the whole, I think that it looks to be shaping up into a quality Pokémon experience. But maybe you don't agree, so let me know what you think down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.